everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week. Thanks again for joining me. It is Friday, January 7th. Thanks for being here. As always, the point of the critique of the week is to give that workshop experience to people who might not have access to it. It's really a valuable thing to see what other people actually think about their poems and how they actually respond, what works, what doesn't. It's not something that you can get from close friends, really, because they try to be nice. We try to be nice, but we also try to be really honest. And that is always the goal here, is to help everybody along in that way. So thanks, everybody, as always, for leaving your comments. That helps me a lot and helps everybody who participates. So thanks for doing that. Let's see, we have Mark Grenier and Jenny Middleton over on Facebook. Hello to both of you. Over on YouTube, we have Angela Gardner's here. She's not here for the Critique of the Week usually. Good to see you. Tom Barlow, D. Coleman, Clayton Clark is here, Dick Westheimer. Terry R. Jason Brunner is here. Oh, he's one of the poets later. And James Langford, hello to you. And Happy New Year. I kind of forget that this is the first critique of the week of 2022. So we have some good poems here. We have 5, actually. We have 2 by Tamara, Raidt, and then we have 3 by Jason Brunner, and they're kind of short, so I think we can get to all 3. But let's jump right in and see how these poems look. And we're going to start with Tamara right here. Tamara Raidt, you probably recognize that name if you're a close follower. I think I turned up the contrast a little too high. Hang on. Properties, or the brightness, I should say. It's a little bright down there. Here we go. It's probably better. I think it's time for a new document camera, actually. It's getting it's not as good as it used to be. Anyway, you might recognize Tamara Raidt's name. She was a poet we've published. She was an Ekphrastic Challenge winner maybe in June or so, I would say. I have to look back at the rattle.com/Ekphrastic to find her poem there. But her poems today, the first one is A Tale of Raptus. And there's a little footnote in here. I think I'll read this, then we'll look up more about Raptus, because as we talk about, I'm always really bad at mythology and keeping everything straight. So in mythology, the Tale of Raptus refers to the abduction of Europa by Zeus. And so the problem for me with a definition like that is I'm like, okay, that's who Raptus is. Now who is Europa and Zeus? I know the planets, Europa is a moon of Saturn. Anyway, good science fiction movie too. Anyway, A Tale of Raptus. He opens me like a shell, finds the ambergris. He is the anchor in the frozen pond, chalky morning, Hotel de Lac, our breath is curtain thin. Opal is the lens through which the city comes to us. Southern France, the streets of Orange smell like mandarin. Last evening we trod upon the Roman theater in lace-up boots we got for a good price at the market. At dinner, we heard each other's version of mythology, and he forgot to mention how Zeus raped Europa under a fig tree, as big as the one under which we made love. Our gaze paler than wine, our voices bouncing on false ceilings. We emptied our glasses on a lacquered floor. What are we here for again? The little hand on the mantel clock ends its shift at 2. Time is just a tissue folded in 8 that goes from pocket to pocket. I convinced him we can seize things without calling them by their Latin names, but the ficus carica had eyes in its branches looking over us as we moaned. The city, which had seen it all, emperors, circus games, watched us kneel. We are flesh and lust, bread and games. Our lips will be telling the tale of Raptus long after they stop groping for each other. This winter will migrate with the Artius flying over a church where we'll never marry. So there's the first poem, A Tale of Raptus. And it's a good poem. It's hard to even know what to suggest. Let's look up Raptus, and let's look up I assume maybe this is the ship that Raptus sailed on, Artius. But let's look up that too, because I like to learn things, even though I'll forget them next. By the end of the show, I'll forget what Artius is. RDS. Okay, not a U and A. Okay. This is in Greek mythology. Artius was a son of Odysseus and Circe. He was said to have founded Ardia, a city in Latium, although others suggest Ardia was founded by Danae. Xenagoras writes that Odysseus with Circe. Do you say Circe? I think someone said you say Circe once, and I always wonder every time. Had 3 sons, Romos, who built 3 cities. Okay, there's really not much here about the Artius. So I don't know what the Artius is there at the end. And let's see what Wikipedia has to say about Raptus. Yeah, so there's not... Oh, interesting. So the word rape seems to come from that, to seize. Interesting. Okay. So that's where the word rape comes from. I didn't know that. It means to seize. From the rapes of the abduction of women, also known as Freudenraub. These are the rapes of Zeus. Interesting. Okay. So, A Tale of Raptus. He opens me like a shell, finds the ambergris. The one thing, ambergris is a sort of a... I don't know if people know. I didn't know about ambergris. That's the whale oil kind of thing, right? Now I can't even remember for sure, ambergris. It's a very... it's a one-off reference to something pretty obscure. Ambergris. That is a solid waxy... Oh, it's the intestine of a sperm whale. It's a solid waxy substance there that's used for medicines and recipes, and it's a spice and very valuable. It's worth more valuable than gold, that ambergris. So he opens me... So, yeah, that's what I was getting at. So I like this beginning, but there's 2 sort of problems with the first couple here. So he opens me like a shell, but ambergris comes from a sperm whale. So opening up like a shell, it's sort of a mixed metaphor almost, and finds the ambergris. You wouldn't find ambergris in a shell. And also ambergris is just, it's not something that most people know, I assume, because we had a poem about ambergris. There's a I think it was Devin Baldwin that wrote a poem, maybe it was someone else, who, the story was that the biggest chunk of ambergris sold for $50,000 or something. And I think it's used for perfumes too. Is that right? If I'm remembering right. But so I'd never heard of it before. And it's sort of a one-off reference to an obscure thing that doesn't really get elaborated on. So it kind of throws you off a little bit, in my opinion, for both those 2 reasons. So I think the first line, weirdly, is maybe just the ambergris part is the only thing in the poem I can think to suggest changing. But otherwise, he opens like a shell to start with is a really great, it's a striking image. It gets you right in the scene. So maybe just a different word than ambergris there, unless somebody in the comments has a good explanation and makes it make more sense. He is the anchor in the frozen pond. And again, when I got to pond, I thought so we have shells or more, and then the whale is like in the sea, and then we're also in a pond. So we're sort of moving through these different watery places. It's a little hard to find your grounding there at first. Chalky morning, but I like it though. I mean, the writing is really good. Chalky morning, Hotel de Lac. Our breath is curtain thin. Opal is the lens through which the city comes to us. I love the way that's phrased. I mean, the whole poem is beautifully written, but that's a good part. Oops, I meant to say up here, but this is good too. The streets of orange smell like mandarin. I wondered about the orange. I think this is probably... Is there a street called Orange in Paris? I'm not sure. So I wondered why it was capitalized, or is it a place? But that's just my ignorance, so don't mind me. Last evening we trod upon the Roman theater and lace-up boots. Lace-up should have a hyphen. Oops. My aim looking at the paper is a little off today. We got for a good price at the market. At dinner we heard each other's version of mythology, but he forgot to mention how Zeus raped Europa under a fig tree. See, the poem sort of really opens up, and you sort of really get into what's going on here. And there's like a transition. Do you feel this transition right here? It's a really nice transition into a specific time. Like we have this sort of overview in the beginning of the poem. Then we get to this dinner where we are sort of transitioning to an actual scene. So the whole thing opens up in our minds as we're reading really well. It's a nice, just note that, other poets, how that goes. At dinner, we heard each other's version of mythology, but he forgot to mention how Zeus raped Europa under a fig tree as big as the one under which we made love. So that's a really wonderfully, the way that sentence moves from the dinner to the Zeus to the fig tree to us under the fig tree. I mean, it's a really nice progression mentally too. So pay attention to the movements of this poem just for a good idea of how it works. Our gaze paler than wine, our voices bouncing on ceilings. We emptied our glasses on the lacquered floor. And again, that could mean a lot of things, but it's very, another striking image. We emptied our glasses on the lacquered floor. And I assume, it's a fight. It became a fight talking about Zeus and all that stuff is how I interpret it. But it's very ambiguous, but very striking. And so you have that image to hold on to. So the ambiguity is fine, which is one of the things we talk about a lot, how image sort of holds you like an anchor or like a touchstone or something. What are we here for again? The little hand on the mantle clock ended its shift at 2. Again, look at that way to say it. Not just it's 2 o'clock, but the little hand on the mantle clock ended its shift at 2. That is just really good stuff. Time is just a tissue folded at 8 that goes from pocket to pocket. Again, great image. And I mean, these lines are just poems on their own. I convince him we can seize things without calling them by their Latin names. But the ficus, that's one of the things I want to look up. Or ficus? I guess a ficus is a kind of plant, right? That's one of the things, another thing I should know, but I'm just ignorant. Oh, a ficus is a fig? See? I didn't even know that. And what was the tree up here? Oh, it says our fig tree. Okay. So that ties it together. That's just me being dumb. But the ficus, carica, had eyes on its branches looking over us. And so the eyes are the figs themselves. So that image really, once you realize that's just a fig, the eyes, really come into view too. This, as we moaned, the city, which had seen it all, emperors circus gamed, watched us kneel. And again, like notice how well this is phrased. Watched us kneel is a very specific motion shown through image. Instead of like telling us what's happening, you're showing us things to put in our mind's eye, like injections of, direct experience. And so it's just good stuff. There's a million ways you could say that, but watch us kneel is such a direct and image-laden way that works really well. We are flesh and lust, bread and games, which ties back to the circus, the bread and circus. And the sort of the emptiness of the relationship too, that we just got in that fight. Our lips will be telling the tale of Raptus long after they stop groping for each other. This winter will migrate with the Artius. See, I don't know what the Artius is because it doesn't. Wikipedia didn't help with that. Flying over a church where we'll never marry. And it had a great ending too. So it's just a really good poem. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Let's see what everybody else is saying. There are a few things tiny things I would change. Let's see. So Peter Desmond mentions that ambergris is used in perfume production, for which orange is noted. See, there you go. It's just another layer. So I guess, and now I'm assuming that orange, let's see. I'm assuming that's a place where perfume is made in France, right? Let's see. Orange, France. Let's see. Or maybe orange, Paris. Orange, France. Or I guess you'd say maybe orange, but yeah, I guess it's a place. City of Orange. Okay. And so orange. Yeah, so so it's I'm not sure. So didn't we start in southern France. It's not Paris. Yeah, and that's where orange is. Okay. And is orange known for making perfume? I bet. No, I don't see that. Let's see. Yeah, well, I'm not seeing really that, but I'm sure it ties together in a way we just don't understand, and in a way that's fine with me too. Like I like that I like it when if there's enough substance, it's like fun to have things that you don't quite get too. When you have the faith in the poet for being, like we sort of develop a trust with the author as we're reading. And if you trust the author enough to know that things have meaning and aren't just randomly thrown in there, it's sort of a nice feeling to have more than you can even access, I think. And so I like that. And now over here. So Dick Westheimer says, small quibble, orange smelled like mandarin line, felt a little too cute for the poem, dropped me out of the sensual nature of the lines leading up to it. And so, so small quibble, orange smelled like mandarin line, felt a little too cute for the poem, dropped me out of the sensual nature of the lines leading up to it. And so, so small quibble, orange smelled like mandarin line, felt a little too cute for the poem, dropped me out of the sensual nature of the lines leading up to it. Interesting. So that was one take on that. The streets of Orange, and this is Orange, France now. I don't know why I thought this said Paris when it said southern France. The streets of Orange smell like, I guess I'm just like, biased, thinking that all of France is just Paris. The streets of Orange smell like Mandarin. So Dick says this is too cute for him. And I don't know. I mean, I kind of personally disagree with that. I didn't read it that way, but I read it. It felt playful to me in a way that sort of fit in that moment before the scene where we turn into the trouble at dinner. So I didn't have that same reaction, but people have different reactions, so that's good to note. Thanks for noting that. Peter Desmond says Ardea is a genus of herons. The genus name comes from the Latin Ardea, heron. Oh, that's interesting. And Jill Egland says that too. Ardea is a kind of heron. Oh, there we go. So thank you. So I guess I looked at, there was a lot of things for, and so it ties back to the Latin names too. I assume that's the Latin name for heron. So it ties back to this line about their Latin names. This is just a good poem. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Even the ambergris kind of made sense. It was just the movement from the shell to the pond through the whale was a little bit too much of a leap for me. I can't think of anything else to say about this. Let me look at Facebook. So Jenny Middleton says the tale of a rape is not seductive, but the sex described seems consensual. Wasn't sure about the mix here. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I found really interesting about the poem, is that it describes what seems like a relationship that was like normal and had good times with a rape. There's a complicated like truth to that. Sort of like psychologically or something. It's one of those things where the poem has something to offer that's hard to describe. And I think that, to me, what Jenny Middleton said, that the tale of rape is not seductive, but the sex seems consensual, and that mix of it, that's what the poem's really about, is the like consent and the way it's I don't know, the way it can seem like consent at the time or something like that. And there's more layers to it than just the physical, what's going on in the moment. I'm having trouble articulating that, but that's what the poem is sort of bringing out. Yeah. So Sharon Frente suggests moving the ambergris down. I feel like that's a little out of place. It is used in making perfume, but perfume doesn't really come up unless the streets of Orange. I don't know. I mean, maybe. It's a tiny quibble. I'm just trying to find things to pick because I like the poem. Let's see. And Mark Greener says Ardea is the name of a boat. And that's the thing. You know what? Here's a suggestion. Well, they're migrating now. This winter will migrate. I read it as a boat too. But they're migrating, so they're birds. But maybe just to confuse, because both me and Mark Grenier had this sort of interpretation initially that was a boat. Because usually when you say the Ardeus and it's italicized like that, you think boat, right? Just because of the and the one word, it feels boat-like. And talking about Greek mythology, there's always named boats and stuff, And so I wonder if we added something about, like, one more line here with, like, wings or some kind of thing described. Like some kind of description of the birds a little bit as they're flying over the church. Then we wouldn't be sort of confused by thinking, wondering what Ardeus is. But they're migrating and flying over the church. We probably should have just known. But that could clear up that little bit of confusion there with maybe one little line. But it's just a good poem. So, my main advice is just to keep submitting poems and publishing them. And the other thing, when Tamara had that poem, maybe it was a Poets Respond poem actually, and not the Ekphrastic Challenge, but she was on like on our Rattlecast at some point for that, I remember. And she writes in English, but she's a native French speaker, so it's kind of pretty impressive. All right. Bellevue Hotel is the other poem. We have about 10 minutes to go over this one. And hopefully there was something helpful there to offer for that first poem. But just, I do think I do always have this worry that really good writers will get discouraged and stop writing. So don't do that with the fact that it's still hard for everybody to publish poems. There's just a lot of competition, especially in the U.S., where you have this industry of MFA programs that are graduating thousands of people a year. There are a lot of people trying to publish poems, and so it's really tough to get through them. We get, I don't have to talk about the numbers, but we get so many. So submitting and publishing, no matter how good you are, takes time. And, I saw some people like Sony Greenfield, I think I saw maybe on Facebook or someone like that, had a post about all the rejections she'd had. And if it was Sony, she'd been Best American Poetry twice. And still it was like 90 submissions rejected this year or something like that. Hope I'm remembering the right person, but it's sort of the game. You got to think of the submission publishing process as the game, but keep at it and don't get discouraged because there's good stuff here that's worth publishing. Bellevue Hotel. I close my eyes and I'm there. A room as if painted inside my eyelids, golden like the plafond of the Louvre Museum. There's a breeze strong enough to make the sheer tremble, my pores open. It's a December day, still pure, uncolored by Christmas markets and their warmish lights. We haven't been there yet. We haven't walked through the fun fair, danced to the mock waves of music, to the screams of roller coasters. Verlaine said there is a violence in every amusement. I guess the voice you took to read his poetry was not the same telling me to leave at the Lantern Festival in Paris. It is a winter tradition your family doesn't honor. Under the waltzing dots, I was clutching the lamp, beholding the flame and thinking I later want to be cremated. In other circumstances, the sheer on my body would be a shroud. The lanterns would be sent in my honor to bring me home, back to the Bellevue hotel room before handing me into the world. I close my eyes and I'm at the Louvre on a Monday afternoon. I meet myself in the eye of the Creator. I am in the wheat field of Van Gogh's painting. I'm an absent crow, the missing ear, the brother that stops sending you letters after his death, the silence you meet underwater when your bathtub overflows. Close your eyes. I'm there. So again, another really good poem. Let's see. So I really like the ending especially took off for me. I was having trouble getting into it a little bit in this section. I don't know about everybody at home. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, here's just one other suggestion. This is from Jason Brunner for the last poem. But I thought it was a good idea. If instead of just Artius, you named the specific species. That's a good suggestion. Then you would know it's a bird if it had 2 words. I think it's a good point. Anyway, Bellevue Hotel. I close my eyes and I'm there. A room as if painted inside my eyelids. Again, great description to start. Golden like the plafond. I don't know what the plafond is, but I don't care. Of the Louvre Museum. There's a breeze strong enough to make the sheer tremble. My pores open. It's a December day, still pure, uncolored by Christmas markets and their warmish lights. Somebody mentioned, I saw the corner of my eye, that somebody mentioned, it was Tom Barlow says warmish seems like an awkward word. It has a different sort of register. It's a little more casual than the rest of the poems. But again, kind of like the orange, the streets of orange smell like mandarin line. There's sort of a playfulness to that I kind of like. The casualness in that spot sort of lightens up the poem a little bit in a way that I like. So we haven't been there yet. We haven't walked through the fun fair. I think maybe I get a little while, lost in the we. And maybe that's why I feel a little less connected in this section. It kind of takes me a little while to figure out who the we is. We haven't walked through the fun fair, danced to the shock waves of music, to the screams of roller coasters. When you get to a we, relationships, no matter what relationship they are, they're so rich and complicated and have so much context. And so, when you say we, who we're talking about as the writer, but the reader has no idea. So it takes a while to sort of piece that together. and that's a distraction. So if you can find a way to let us know a little better, I guess it's here that's actually introduced, but to let us know a little better who the we is, then we don't get a little as lost in that part. Verlaine said there is violence in every amusement. Again, a great line, a great quote there. I guess the voice you took to read as poetry was not the same telling me to leave at the Lantern Festival in Paris. So again, like not knowing really the we, I'm starting to think it's another relationship kind of thing. But up to here, it could be a family walking through. It really changes things change. And Tom Barlow says, yeah, violence in every amusement is a great line, even if it's a quote. It really is. Yeah, it was a good thing to pull out. I guess the voice you took to read his poetry was not the same telling me to leave at the Lantern Festival in Paris. And I guess it's only here, when we say your family, we say your family, that I finally recognize that it's a relationship we're talking about, like a romantic relationship, and there's separate families. Until then, it could be like we're just talking about our own family or friendship. It's different. Under the waltzing dots, I was clutching a lamp, beholding the flame, and thinking I later want to be cremated. I don't know. This whole section, it kind of drifts in a way that I think this can be kind of up to maybe here. Can be tightened up and sort of clarified. Under the waltzing dots, I was clutching the lamp, beholding the flame, and thinking I later want to be cremated. In other circumstances, the shear in my body would be a shroud. A great line there. It kind of picks up again here. The lanterns would be sent in my honor to bring me home, back to the Bellevue hotel room before handing me into the world. Again, great way to put that. I close my eyes and I'm at the Louvre on a Monday afternoon. I meet myself, and this is where it really takes off. We get into the Louvre Monday afternoon, and all the ways that you relate to the paintings there. It's just really, really, really gripping. I meet myself in the eye of the Creator. I'm in the wheat field of Van Gogh's painting. I'm an absent crow, missing the ear. Again, a great description there. The brother. So I am this is a really nice, way to put repetition in there. I think that works really well. The brother that stopped sending you letters after his death, the silence you meet underwater when your bathtub overflows. Close your eyes, I'm there. Again, I just love the ending. And so Angel Gardner says, I like you travel with her in the poem in the beginning. The middle lost me a little bit. Yeah, so this middle section is what to work on. It's just not clear. And so let's see. I close my eyes and I'm there. A room as if painted inside my eyelids, golden like the plafond at the Louvre Museum. And this is talking about the hotel room that she went back to. The speaker went back to after, I don't know if it was breaking up or just getting another fight with this person and leaving. They were at the festival and she left alone. So back to the hotel room. And golden like the plafond at the Louvre Museum. There's a breeze strong enough to make the sheer tremble. My pores open. I think my pores open. I didn't mention this, but I think that's just weaker than the rest of the writing. So maybe there's a better way to say that or something more interesting. It's weaker than the rest of the poem. I don't know why I even write things down because my writing is so sloppy and it's not like I'm sending this to anybody anyway. But anyway, it's a December day, still pure, uncolored by Christmas markets and their warmish lights. Again, I like the warmish lights. I don't know. We haven't been there yet. We haven't walked through the funfair, danced to the shockwaves of music, to the screams of our coaster. So this is back in time before this breakup or fight or whatever it was, which I don't think it has to be clear. We know kind of what happened. And I love this line, too. I guess the voice you took to read his poetry was not the same. The winter tradition your family doesn't honor, or the waltzing dots. I was clutching the lamp. I guess like clutching the lamp. I'm not sure what that it's hard to piece together this. I think it's actually fine maybe. Other than the we is hard to, it takes a little while to know who the we is and so what the relationship is. But once you do, this section is fine. So maybe just introducing the we a little bit. And then down here, it's with the winter tradition your family doesn't honor. I'm not sure what that is. Under the waltzing dots, I was clutching the lamp, so I don't know what the waltzing dots are. I guess it's the Lantern Festival. Beholding the flame. So I guess maybe, some little things like this, but beholding the flame makes it seem like there's one flame, which is one of the things that's a little confusing. It's just hard to get this together in your mind. Because if it's a Lantern Festival and there's these waltzing dots, each dot would be a flame. And so there's, I don't know. I later want to be cremated. In other circumstances, a shear on my body would be a shroud. And this is where it picks up. The lanterns would be set in my honor. Yeah, and so we get this whole lantern thing. So I like the progression of the poem. It's just a little hard to follow here. So work on the clarity of this section. And yeah, Terry R says, yes, it's hard to follow if it were in the past or the present. That's a good point. Yeah, thanks, Terry. That's part of the confusion, too, is that we have, I close my eyes and I'm there. So, like, where am I now? Like, I'm going back in time. There's a breeze strong enough. So what is the December day? So this is the back in time. I close my eyes and I'm seeing the December day, or is it the December day now when I close my eyes, So there's it's just a little bit. And I think maybe if we knew when the Lantern Festival was, it would be a little more clear. I think that going back in time is going to the December day that was the Lantern Festival, but I'm not quite sure. So the only point is that there's these little things that make the poem a little bit hard to follow that sort of ruin the quality of the poem, which is not quite as tight and clear as it could be. So it's only this middle section. But what we're saying makes total sense, and it works really well, I think. The movement to the I want to be cremated from looking at the flames on the lanterns, and then how that moves back into the shroud and all that stuff, and then the Van Gogh. So that's really works. So the progression of the poem, like if you had a plot arc of the poem, that's good. It's just the clarity and sort of this like rising action section that's a little off, I think. Okay, let's look at let me look at Facebook. I haven't looked at that in a while. Let's see. So Jenny Middleton mentions, I think sheer silk is a thing. A shift is a style of dress. Where was that? The sheer. Oh, so somebody mentioned that maybe this should be sheet and it was just a typo. I just imagine it being sheer fabric. I'm not really sure exactly what kind, but I imagine it a dress or something. Let's see. Jean-Andre Van Breda says that the waltzing dots could be a reference to Van Gogh's paintings. That's another nice reference. Yeah, I like that. So Jenna Middleton says, love the ending lines and think the way the speaker defines herself has shifted, perhaps after an ended relationship. Yeah, I think so too. I think these two poems are similar in subject matter. Mark Greener says it could start with, I close my eyes and work that way. So Susan Naimi says, or shears as in the curtains in the hotel room, then sheer as a shroud. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure exactly what the fabric was. I could imagine it could be a dress, or it could be like like a canopy bed, or it could be the curtains in the hotel room, like all those things that kind of, I don't know. And maybe, burying yourself in fabric, kind of, as if it were a shroud, is kind of something you do when you're sad, So is at the end of this relationship. So I think that all makes sense to me. It's just the sort of, there's a little bit too much of time to piece together in the who's doing what. It just takes a little too long to piece together what's going on. If that makes sense. That's the only problem with the poem to me. Like once you do, it all makes sense to me. But it takes a little too long to get there. And so we need a little more clarity just in this section about where we're going back to and who we're talking about. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next poem. The next poet completely. And the poet is here today. I saw him on YouTube. So this is Jason Brunner. and always useful. He has some questions about each poem. They're all pretty short, and he included some questions. So this poem, for the first poem, Moonshot, one small conundrum I had was how to punctuate it, so keep an eye on that. I ended up keeping punctuation almost completely out of it, but I'd love to get some insight there. I also have gone through a couple rounds of editing to get the meter and rhythm to be as natural as possible, but I wasn't sure if there was more work to be done there. So this is the first poem, Moonshot. You can already see a very different style than Tamara's. Jason Brunner, Moonshot. The moon pulled up close, and she whispered her plight. When we stand on our toes and strain with our might, we still cannot touch, but for now she is here, in sight but not reach. The pull of her tears brings these waves to the beach, where it hurts so much. The world lifts peaks of rock, and through glint there is snow. She dashes up to the top, and their baskets in the glow. The end is such, with focus and furrowed face, she plants her brown feet, then with a burst into space, she flies, she floats, they meet, but the moon lost her clutch. So I always love meter and rhyme and poems that sort of do that in interesting ways too. So I like the structure of this poem, with the repetition, with the rhymes here, the touch much, such, clutch, all moving through in those one lines, and then the perfect rhymes throughout here. The what is it, A B B A or A B A B? I mean, so it's a nice format. Nate Jacob mentions that Moonshot is written as such that I don't feel like the punctuation is missing. Yeah, there's not a problem with the punctuation here. I would just leave this as an unpunctuated poem, so I think it's fine. The one thing, when you have a poem like this, what you're doing really is setting up the structure of the meter and then sort of playing with it, and you have to sort of play with it in a careful way. The reason why that the punctuation doesn't need punctuation is because there's a really strong sense of line, and so then the meter sort of falls apart. You notice I tripped a lot in this segment here, so the meter feels off to me here, and that sort of throws it all off in a way that's not playful. But then the meter here changes in a way that is playful. So I'm going to go through the poem kind of again, but like do this and don't do this. This is kind of what we're going to talk about here. And Malcolm Bless says end stopping makes the rhythm and rhymes too noticeable. Yeah, it'd be nice to have them buried more. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, people have different tastes for that kind of thing. And I love like the Kim Adenizio kind of version of form where it's hard to notice, or other people too. Dana Gioia and A.E. Stallings, people like that. Patricia Smith's good at that too. The Moonshot. The moon pulled up close, and she whispered her plight. When we stand on our toes and strain with our might. Again, this is a good setup. It sets up the rhythm really well. Everything is sort of very clean and strong. We still cannot touch, but for now she is here. And again, and now when we get to here, I kind of like the start of the poem. And then we get to here, it's a little too, it starts to feel like a little bit, I guess, I don't know how to say this, but my little like spidey senses in there says, uh-oh, like we're going to start forcing the words to fit the meter, aren't we? Still cannot touch, but for now she is here is a little bit, just a slight bit of like archaic and stilted, and to fit the rhyme. In sight but not reach, again, it's not really how you'd say it. The pull of her tears, and then we get tears, which is, avoid tears, avoid hearts. Brings these waves to the beach. Yeah, brings the waves to the beach is nice. I like that. Where it hurts so much. The world lifts peaks of rock, and through glint there is snow. She dashes up to the top, and their baskets aglow. So it's here. It's and their baskets aglow, in the glow. It's such a stilted way of, that's not how you'd speak. And so it really throws you out of the rhythm of the poem there. The world lifts peaks of rock. And again, what is the rhythm? But for now, she is here. So there's a really strong, like, what do we call it, diameter. The moon pulled up close. There's two stresses there. And here, the world lift speaks of rock. There's like one too many syllables, one too many stresses. Because normally you would have the world as stressed. And to keep it in that same meter, you have to unstress it. But since it's the first word you come to, you automatically you just naturally read it as stressed. And then it throws the rhythm off the whole stanza. Sorry, I'm sitting on my own foot. Okay, so this is kind of clunky in a way that should be addressed. The ending is such: with focus and furrowed face, she plants her brown feet. And then we have this punctuation here too, I should note, So it's not unpunctuated. With focus, and that's something in here too. And so I think, yeah. So, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So I think if you aren't using punctuation, just try to find a way to do it without using it anywhere. And I think I don't think this is necessary. I'd probably just cut this. The ending is such: with focus and furrowed face. Again, it's not really a natural way to say. She plants her brown feet, then with a burst into space. But here is what I like. So I like the way that the meter changes a little bit here. She flies, she floats, they meet, and then there's this really strong enjambment down there, but the moon lost her clutch. So just from a meter and kind of rhythm level, there's some places where it's formed in a strange way to fit the rhyme, and that really you should avoid that because it throws you out of the poem. And Malcolm Glass says something. Timberlake says form is pushing the writer into awkward and trite expression, which is a good way to put that too. And Nate Jacobs says the same thing. Give me formal poems, yes, but be strict for readability with rhythm and rhyme. Otherwise, it feels forced and trite. And yeah, that's the issue with the form. The other thing, well, let me look at YouTube and see what people are saying there. So Clayton Clark says, I think bearing the rhyme a bit might bring some nice tension. I like the ending. And so this poem too, so the style, it's got to just not be stilted like that, have things inverted just to fit what you're trying to do with the rhyme. It has to feel natural still. That's like the magic of formal poetry, is that it's unnatural that feels natural, and there's like a tension between those two things that's really cool. And especially if you don't notice, and then you sort of halfway through, oh, this is like rhyming, and you sort of get the whole flow thing together. That's what's amazing about it. When it's working really well, like a poet like A.E. Stallings or someone just does it because she's written like this forever. And here there's too much of that. I'm making it fit, and you just have to find ways to not do that and to make it be natural. So read those poets I mentioned, and see how they just poems by them and see how they do it. And yeah, bury the rhyme, like play with that tension, and you always. Jamie Hecht is another poet who he was on the Rattlecast way early on, but he was talking about the dope. He's a psychotherapist as well as a poet, and he was talking about the dopaminergic response of having an expectation that's you anticipated being met, which triggers the dopamine, and then it's either fulfilled or not, which changes the different. You either get a dopamine or serotonin response. It was fascinating, but that's the kind of thing you want to play with formal poems, and this is a little too straight through it, and forced in a little bit. Angela Gardner mentions that it should say the moon differently in the first line, since it's the same in the title. This is a more question. Should he say moon differently in the first line, since it's in the title? So here, the moonshot. The moon pulled up close. I think that's fine, because moonshot is different than the moon. I don't really have a trouble with that. But there is a lack of, look at the really nice details in the last set of poems that we had. There's a lack of that. There's a sort of a generalized view too, which is something that formal poetry sort of pushes you toward as well. I like to see a little more detail in the descriptions as we move through, which might open it up in a way that you can find different things to say. But for now, she is here in sight but not reach. The pull of her tears brings these waves to the beach. I like the idea. The pull of her tears bring these waves to the beach. It's really nice. But could we describe that a little bit? Could you find a way to describe how, instead of saying in sight but not in reach, is there a way you could describe like the distance? Just as an example, like with detail. Is there a way to be a little more specific as you're moving through the poem and describing things? The world lifts peaks of rock, which is a nice expression. Through the glint there is snow. So like she dashes up to the top, and there basks in the glow. I don't know, like it's sort of I don't know how to put it, but it feels like watching it's like a cartoon instead of a photograph or something. There's not that detail. And so can we have more detail as we're describing and moving through here? The ending is such. The focus on furrowed face, she plants her brown feet. Then with a burst into space. I like that the rhythm there at the very end. She flies, she floats, they meet, but the moon lost her clutch. Peter Desmond says the idea of gravitation is nice for this poem. Yeah, I like the I like the pull. I don't like the tears, but I like the pull of her, whatever brings these waves to the beach. I like that sense of pulling and bringing the waves. And what at the very end, what is her clutch? Like how does the moon actually lose its clutch? Is that even possible? And maybe that's interesting as an ending. I'm not sure. But let's probably move on to the other poem. So Elizabeth Johnson Ambrose says, or different, more surprising verbs is that's a good point too. So always there's sort of this hierarchy of value or something in words, and nouns and verbs are the best, and adjectives and adverbs are the worst, in sort of this hierarchy. And if you can find interesting verbs to use to describe, like things that are a little bit different than what you would expect, that's the way to bring the poem to life. So it's a good suggestion, Elizabeth. She also says, basis in the glow is too familiar, maybe something more surprising. Yeah, the whole thing is sort of familiar. It's sort of like we're putting this sort of familiarness into this form. It's kind of what's going on in the poem. And that's not quite enough. We need surprise, and we need sort of freshness a little bit more. And Gendre Van Breda. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah. So Deborah Zenha Adams says a clutch of eggs, but Gendre Van Breda says title reference. And I like that. I like that idea. So that is an interesting way to think about it that I never have, which I actually really like. So the moon, which we had over here, it brings the waves to the beach, but then it can't like pull the waves all the way to it, right? Like eventually it loses. It's sort of like, it's almost like it's gripping a rope, and then the string gets too much and it lets go. And that's kind of how gravity works as the moon spins around the earth. I think that's really cool. So like heighten that. That's a really good idea. Jenny Middleton says clutches a few meanings here. Could be a handbag or uses a verb to clutch. I think scientifically the moon is meant to be receding, so losing its clutch. Yeah. So it's interesting. I really like that. I like that concept at the end. Okay, we got to keep going though. And let's see what was next. This is Revelation. And again, there's Jason Brunner, and he mentions for Revelation, I guess I wasn't sure how clear the poem is compared to what I intended, so I'm hoping some outside perspective helps. So looking for clarity, which we always do around here. It's getting a little dark. Hang on. So the light always changes as the sun comes up for me. A little more brightness. A little better. Okay. And of course I could, black out my windows, but I don't want to. Revelation. You held my finger in your hand, traced the emblems at the cloudy edges for me, but they mistook me, misplaced me. I aimed at gleaming targets, came crashing into regular rock. I am regular rock rearranging, so I'll rearrange. I'll not have some dirt digger dig me a well. I'll dig it myself, except what waters spring. I'm a cliff face now. I'll keep watch over you. Even if you think I'm cloudy and the golden emblems will target me and burn me to death. Well, that's interesting. Revelation. And Jason mentioned, clarity is the issue here that he's wondering about. And I think it definitely needs, it's one of those things where I'll tell you about like thoughts as I moved through the poem. So the cloudy, you held my finger in your hand, traced the emblems at the cloudy edges for me. So the cloudy edges is another one of those descriptions that's very vague and sort of flat. And so when I get to there, I'm not expecting much from the poem. Like if I open up a submission and read this, I'm thinking like, there's not going to be a lot here. But then it picks up later. But so maybe make this more interesting would be my suggestion here at the top. They mistook me, misplaced me. I aimed at gleaming targets, came crashing into regular rock. I am rock rearranged. See, this part is an interesting little run. And I liked it. I sort of, it pulled me back into the poem where I wasn't expecting to have a lot to sort of enter into. I ended up having it. I am regular rock rearranged, rearranging, so I'll rearrange. It's interesting. I'll not have, you can even feel the energy in the voice. Like as soon as this I is introduced, the poem, the whole rhythm and the pace, and it sort of enters a new space that has a lot more energy. Can I really feel that? I'll not have some dirt digger dig me a well. I'll dig it myself. Accept what waters spring. I'm a cliff face now. I'll keep watch over you, even if you think I'm cloudy, and the golden emblems will target me and burn me to death. So it actually lasts, I think, until the whole time where the I is here, I guess you could say. Like this whole section right here I like. When the you comes back, I get lost again a little bit. Yeah, Nate Jacobs says here, Revelation starts with too many pronouns. They, you, and I. Yeah, it's true. You, I didn't even notice the they. Yeah, and Malcolm Glass says make the poem more interesting by making it sharper, more specific. It's vague as it is. Yeah, the vagueness is the issue with both these two poems, I think. There's a way that there's like an abstract distance, and some people like sort of argue or have the sense, that being non-specific lets things be more relatable because you can like fit them anywhere. But that's really not. Emotion and everything interesting lives in specificity. Like that's how we sort of get that suspension of disbelief where we forget we're reading a poem and we're sort of transported to another place and get to live in someone else's like mind and body and shoes. And it's the details there that we need to make that magic happen. Like that's like the magic of poetry, really. And so vagueness doesn't really work, even though there's sort of a false belief that some people have that being vague lets it be more relatable. It's just the opposite is true. So it's the vagueness up here is just there's not enough to grab onto. There's not that like tangible touchstones. And I don't know who the you is. You held my finger, and like I think it was Nate Jacobs said that there's the you held my finger. So there's the you, there's the me, and then there's the they too. And I have no idea who any of these people are. Even at the end of the poem, I don't know who they are. I know the I have sort of a sense of the emotion of the I. So that's where the poem picks up, is where it's a little more clear. Although Nate Jacobs says, I like the declarative nature of the I, but I don't really get it, what is revealed. Let's see. Yeah, who reveals? I am aimed at gleaming targets, came crashing into regular rock. I am regular rock rearranging, so I'll rearrange. I'll not have some dirt digger. See, this is the thing, that there's a power in the voice, allows it to be, it allows you a lot more leeway. And it only takes you so far. Let's see. So Elizabeth Johnson Ambrose says, I'm thinking about the specificity of the poem Rattle published on its page today from issue 74. It's so specific, even including names of the niece and nephew. Yeah, I'll show you that. We might as well. The daily poem today, just for an example of how It really lets you feel. I have to switch over to. There we go. This was Allison Townsend, Burritos in Wisconsin. After my brother divorced, he came every summer to my house in Wisconsin with his kids, making the long journey from San Francisco to Madison, as if he were coming home. The week with us respite in his fractured world, and we get we got all the names. Gabe, tall blonde man with his 2 little kids. So we get the description there. Gabe with his tight curls and green eyes. Fiona with ringlets and a pink polka dot dress. So we get the names here. A stuffed toy called Picture Pig. We get the detail of it. It's not just a stuffed toy. It's a stuffed toy called Picture Pig. We get that detail, and it's those details that let us, relate and feel like we're part of the. We're part of the. We become the speaker. That's what you do in the best. The poems that work best, and it's these details that let that happen. And if you look through. This poem here, and sorry for the phone ring in the background, that it says scam likely. So I'm sure that's what it is, but I can't reach it. I aimed at gleaming targets. I came crashing. So if we get to know, we'd relate to the poem and have more connection to it if we got to know who the I was and what we're talking about, which we really don't. But the writing here I like, though. I like the, being rearranged in the sense of I'll not have some dirt digger dig me a well. There's like a defiance and like an irritability in that's I think works. I'll dig it myself, except what waters spring. I'm a cliff face now. I'll keep watch over you. And that could even be if we knew what was going on, if we knew the situation, even just in like the title, if it wasn't revelation, but if we knew if the title said who the you was and sort of what the setup was for the poem, what the context was. Then this part about how, the digger and stuff, and then I'm a cliff face now. I'll keep watch over you. That could be the ending of a poem. I think that would work. It's a really interesting, strong declarative statement that brings things to life. It's good there. So I don't know. We need to know more about what's going on. Okay, let's look at the last poem too. Moving Boxes and Other Lies. And this poem, Jason says, I am planning on watching... Oh, wait, no. If there's time for Moving Boxes and Other Lies, my question for that poem is whether it comes across as meaningful, trite, or somewhere in between. Moving Boxes and Other Lies. So for this already, we get a lot more just in the title. Before I even read it, I'll mention we get more in the title, Moving Boxes and Other Lies. So there's a moving and there's a boxes. There's a sense of something that's going on. So at least there's some context here. There was a moment when I became better than my hometown, but you were submerged into yours. There is a moment when my truths for you stack high, but I lie with you. And there will be a moment when our families gather to bury our boxes and decide if our things belong anymore. So this is a nice ending, actually. I like that. And again, we get the vagueness, though. So the vagueness is the issue, Jason, with all these poems. So the idea of moving and there being boxes is a nice specific thing. There's a moment when I became better than my hometown, so that all makes sense. But you were submerged. We have no idea who you're talking about. You were submerged into yours. In your hometown, but we don't know what your hometown is. We don't know what any of this is. There's a moment when my truths for you stack high, but I lie with you. So one of the things we talk about regularly on this critique of the week is this sort of idea that there's certain poems that they're private rather than public. And if you're writing for publication and sharing with others, they have to be public poems, which means they have to contain all the context necessary to understand and appreciate and relate to them. And so in a poem like this, it works completely fine as a poem to give to the you. If you're trying to tell the you somebody, there's this private message between the you and I that's worth sharing. That seems like what's going on here, but it's not letting us in on that relationship. So there's a moment when my truths for you stack high, but I lie with you. That means a lot to whoever the you is, I think. I assume. But we don't know who the you is. We don't know what the relationship is, and we don't have any of the background or context. So it doesn't mean anything to us. And so that's the issue here. But there will be a moment when our families gather to bury our boxes. Again, see, this is an example of what we were talking about with the specificity being so important and not being vague. You can imagine the families gathering to bury our boxes, and it's a strange image too. Like we're talking about moving boxes, I assumed from the title, and so having people like gather around a hole to bury our moving box is a really interesting image, and it's surprising. Like Elizabeth Johnson Ambrose was saying, it's surprising to have that image of people gathering around to bury our boxes. It's a stimulating thing in your mind to come across the line like that. And so that's the thing to shoot for. Then decide if our things belong anymore. And that works too. So I think this little ending is what's working and what to aim for with the rest of the poem. So is there a way you can tell this story, whatever the relationship is between the I and you, so that we can be in on it, we can know what's going on, and write it in the way that it's written here, with that kind of detail. So when you're writing a poem that's public, you're writing it for an audience, not for the person who you're talking about, and so you have to let us in and keep us in mind and not keep the subject in mind. And so that's kind of what's going on here, I think. And there are a lot of poems that are very intimately written to another person. I mean, there's a billion examples, but they always let us in, so it feels like we're eavesdropping and we know what's going on and we can relate to it and feel the emotions of it. It can never be that distant where we don't know the context. So let me see what people are saying. So Jason mentions, I think the best part of this experience is I had a lot of these critiques in the back of my head, but this is finally drawing them out. Yeah, I mean, because I have to acknowledge, what's going on, and the danger kind of sharing poems with the regular people that are around you is because they'll say, oh, that's great, and they'll say what they like, and it's hard to know, what an actual audience thinks and where we get lost and what's not connecting, So, let's see. And Antigone says, let us in. That is always the difficulty with me. Yeah. Yeah. And Terry says, yeah, trust yourself. Yeah. Peter Desmond mentions, but I lie with you is a pleasant surprise. Contrast. Yeah, it is. If we knew what this meant, it would be really interesting, I think. Like the subject matter, is this the one where Jason mentioned if it meant anything? Let's see. My question for that poem is whether it comes across as meaningful, trite, or somewhere in between. I can feel the meaning in the poem, and the meaning of the poem is right there. Like whatever this is, the meaning is resonant and actually exists. Like it's not a poem that is written for no reason. It's just that we can't access it as strangers that don't know the context of the relationship and what's actually going on. But the meaning is there. Like you can feel the meaning even though you have no idea what it might be as a reader. You can still tell. And it's there. We just don't have a way to get to it. It's like a walled off. It's in a room, but there's no door to that room. And you can tell it's in there. Like you can hear like the tiger breathing in there or something. But there's no windows or doors, so we don't get to see it. Let's see. And Elizabeth Johnson Ambrose also said, I like to play on the word lie, but I want it to be developed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's pretty much all everybody's saying. And yeah, and too, Malcolm Glass pointed this out as well. Bury our boxes is great. A surprise, a specific image, metaphor. Yeah, so we're like thirsty for this kind of stuff. And when we get it, we're like, oh yeah. Like it, it really brings the poem to life. And if it was 3 stanzas this vivid and interesting, it'd be a good poem. And it would really work. So it's just making it this, specific and surprising as you move through the subject matter you're talking about, which is definitely here. There's something about leaving in this relationship and how each of the 2 people relate to the hometown, and what leaving means, I guess, between the 2 people. There's definitely something there. So definitely work on this poem and expand it with more. Like you're telling us a story. You're not telling the person you're talking about what's important, if that makes sense. Okay, I think that's going to be it for today. But thanks everybody for these really interesting poems to talk about. I really appreciate it all the time when people put their poems up. It helps the poets, but it helps us all be able to articulate what we think about poems better and what's working. It helps our own writing, helps everybody watching. So thanks to everybody for participating and for sharing the poems. As always, we'll have 2 more poets next week. Next week's guest in the Rattlecast, or this Sunday's guest, I should say, is going to be Grant Quackenbush. And this is going to be maybe one of the more controversial episodes we've done, because Grant, there are already some people who are upset about his poem because he takes on sort of the MFA program type thing and the sort of monoculture-ish type issues that poetry have, which people don't really talk about much. And he says this is the last poem. He's so I don't know how real it is, but he's so sort of disaffected with the poetry world that he says this is the last book he's ever going to write. I don't know if it's true. I mean, the last poem that was in the book is the poem that we published, and it says this is the last poem I'll ever write. I have no idea if that's true or not, or if that's just some posturing as the artist. But we'll find out on Sunday. I'm curious to talk to him. And his book is Off Topic, and this is Rattlecast number 126. The prompt for this week. Hopefully I actually added it to the Rattlecast page this time, because last week I forgot. Write a poem about a place you've always wanted to visit. Be as specific as you can. The Louvre, which we were just talking about, rather than just Paris, France, is Megan's example there. But write a poem about a place you've always wanted to visit, which implies that you didn't actually visit it. So you have to use your imagination, and that should be interesting. That is your prompt for this week, Rattlecast number 126, with Grant Quackenbush. We'll have open lines as always. Have some Poets Respond poems at the beginning, as always. It is Sunday, January 9th, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great weekend in the meantime, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye. All right.